of how peace at home and abroad are intricately connected. So what we're going to do is have the panel address a set of questions. There's 4, and each one will determine which ones they want to address as we go through them. And then we want to really have some discussion from the floor. And the first question, which they'll have opportunity to tell you who they are and about their work, is please tell us about your work and how you see it in yourself, and how you see your work relating to peace and anti-war. We can go one right down the line.
I've been a professor at a community college in Newark, New Jersey for 5 years now. It's a mainly Black and Latino community college in the heart of Newark, New Jersey. A substantial percentage of the students are local Newark resident or area, and then a huge number are also international students, many undocumented. And so the primary way that I'm able to build the peace at home, peace abroad type of interest is by basing myself out of that institution, out of that particular building. And I go there faithfully every week, even in the summertime. So the first thing is I found a home in my home. I'm from Newark, New Jersey. So I came back to where I'm from. So I found a home where I wanted to root myself. Because in order to do peace at home, peace abroad, you actually, when you find out that someone got shot up the block from you, that has to matter to you. When you live in a community where there's homelessness or where there is the rampant problems that are so visible with a racist, sexist, capitalist society, that has to mean more to you than just reading a newspaper article. The same way you read about what happens in Palestine and you hear about children being burned and you feel that hate, you have to also feel it when you hear about and when you see the homeless, that you drive past outside of the train station. So I made sure I came back to a place I care about and that I'm invested in locally. So that was the first factor, is coming back home. And then it also meant that I just made a commitment to not doing as many of the things I personally wanted to do as quickly as I'd like to be able to do them. So in a perfect world, my first book would already be done. The second book would be almost done. But in the real world, neither book is done. And in part it's because the guy who just became mayor of Newark, New Jersey, his name is Raz Baraka. And Raz Baraka is the son of Leroy Jones / Amiri Baraka. And this brother right here, in part, was named by the sister of Amiri Baraka, who recently passed away. And I became very involved in the issues in Newark, New Jersey, around community leadership and inclusion in the political process in Newark, New Jersey. So that's how I became active in some of what's happening at home, was through City Hall and local elections and local political forces, mixed with integrating myself with a bunch of amazing young people who are always ready to learn new things. So those two factors, and then adding to that, staying active in VFP. So when you all have always asked, Margaret, can you participate? Can you come to this? I never totally drifted off and went totally off the grid. Like, I always, to some extent, stayed connected. So when you personally are a person who has one foot here and one foot there, you become the glue to the peace at home, peace abroad. So it's not just something I'm talking about. It means that some of these people here, as I've been taking down names and putting them in my notebook, it's because either I want to Skype you in for a lecture for my students, or I want to physically bring you in, or I want you to donate to something I'm doing. It's because it's not going to be theoretical when I make the connections. It's going to be the physical, concrete, lived experience. So that's who I am, and that's an aspect of what I do, and I think it might be interesting if they answered that question as well.
Thank you, Mike.
Well, as you spoke, I knew I was in the right place. Rootedness and concreteness are very, very powerful. Moving out of our head into our hands and feet, we have to do that in order to achieve peace at home and peace abroad. I want to say thank you for the invitation. This is a real honor to sit on this panel with these two really folks I hope to become friends with, because I respect the work that you're doing. I'm Reverend Amy Cantrell, and I want to say to you, I think that this is one of the most integrity-filled and weighted voices in America right now around peace, as Veterans for Peace. I think there are entrees that you all have that probably nobody else has in a country that has been awash with false patriotism. I think you all can speak to that in some very, very powerful ways. I'm rooted in an intentional community called Beloved Community, or Beloved House, or Beloved, or that place on Grove Street where I can wash my clothes and find shelter, etc., depending on who you talk to. We work with, as I see it, victims of war and the war machine, which are predominantly folks who live on the streets or are struggling in poverty or have been pushed to the margins. And as I say, poverty and homelessness does not discriminate, and neither do we. So our community is incredibly diverse, quote unquote, by race, age, gender, sexual orientation, ability, status, etc. And I find my fire there. I find my passion for wanting to create peace. We sort of live by solidarity, hospitality, organizing around social justice and peacemaking. Most of our justice work and our peacemaking work actually comes by listening to the stories of victims. That's how we know how to act and how we begin to organize. We don't operate on a hierarchy. It's all about us. We are the people that we need, and so we organize together and create change together. This past week I got to dig in the dirt with some children who happen to live in public housing, and we were creating the Claudette Colvin Peace Garden. So I find a lot of power in connecting with history and what folks have gone before us have done, and teaching that to the next generation, how that they can create change and be hope and stand up for what is right, and connect with each other. So I'm very happy to be here, and I'll turn it over to my brother and new friend.
Good afternoon. Yes, my name is Ngaza Sababu Laughing House. Honored to be here and be able to share some experiences with you, and want to basically share with you the work we do and how it's rooted. I came here in 1979 from the New York, New Jersey area where I was born and raised, to work on Ku Klux Klan cases here in North Carolina known as the Greensboro Massacre, where 5 people were murdered on November 3rd, 79. They were all activists, pretty much like everyone in this room. And as you know, it put a big chill on organizing across the state when the Klan murdered community organizers, union organizers, people who were trying to make some fundamental change in this very treacherous political landscape here in North Carolina. So I began organizing a group called Black Workers for Justice, one of the organizations which I'm one of the co-founders with. Y'all know Saladin Muhammad, some of you know him. And also many other workers. And want to acknowledge some of them. Some of them are here today. Can y'all just stand up for a minute? We brought about 9 of our members. Some of them are veterans. Darian, Nathanette, Norman Fairley, Rick Scott, and some of the others are floating around. The reason I acknowledge them is because none of this work can I take on by myself. Organizations, and this work has to be taken on by very strong organizations. That's the only way we can magnify and amplify our work, very much like the work you guys have been doing with Veterans for Peace over the last few decades. Doing an excellent job. I know you have your challenges, but I know we're going to try to do a little singing at the banquet, since I also believe that culture, I learned this from Brother Amir Baraka and Amina Baraka, and his sister, belated sister, Kimako Baraka, when I was in Harlem. She ran the House of Kumba, a very important cultural institution in Harlem, where we did get a chance to try to share this vision for a better world, a world with justice, and as we all know, peace will not come without justice.
That's right.
Workers' rights, it's another front that Black Works for Justice has drilled into and bored into. I happen to also be president now of a union called the North Carolina Public Service Workers Union, UE Local 150. Brother John knows because he got arrested with us in our labor delegation during the Moral Monday activities we've been having here in North Carolina. And I want to acknowledge Brother John. Love you, man. He's a soldier as well, working class soldier as well. So part of our work has been working with building the UE 150 of the North Carolina Public Service Workers Union. Too often unions are just focused on what we call workplace issues. Not understanding that workers live in communities, they live in societies, they're in a country, they're in a world where all of these dynamics are at play that wind up making them suffer and making other people around the world suffer. So one thing that our union always takes up, we just had a convention last weekend, we took up the question of war, international peace and justice. Had a pretty, should I say, rigorous discussion in our union convention on the question about why we had to pass this resolution in support of the self-determination for the Palestinian nation, basic human right, and why we got to bring all these wars, these unjust wars, to an end. We do know that all of you are resistors, and there are always struggles for resistance. There's always struggles to fight back. We know that the African liberation struggles back in the 60s and 70s, these were struggles fighting against oppression. We're not against all wars. You got to, when people are fighting and struggling to resist, you can't tell them the means in which they can do that by. In Angola, Mozambique, Palestine, we can't tell them because the foot's on their head and they're losing lives every day and they have to fight back and resist. Our union stands very strongly. We got union members like Darian and Nathanette, they're here today. Some of them are veterans. Some of our union members are veterans. And they too wanted me to bring you this greeting of solidarity from them as well, because we have to be linked up to these very important activities such as this convention here today. The other organization that we've been building is the Southern Workers Assembly. We can't count on the Democratic Party to bring these wars to an end or to support the Palestinian people's right to self-determination. We cannot rally just around the Democratic Party. We have to build our own organizations that empower everyday working people like the people in this room to take on those challenges and not count on these political parties. I didn't say vote. I'm going to be voting. Y'all know who I'm going to be voting for and who I'm going to be voting against. Certainly if I was in Newark, I'd be voting for Ross, Baraka. Know the brother's spirit because I know the cloth and tree in which he's cut from. The other organization, in addition to the union, the Southern Workers Assembly that we try to do our work through, has been the BLUNT, the Black Left Unity Network. As you know, Amir Baraka, Ella Baker, all these great folks represent the left inside the Black Freedom Movement and the Black Liberation Movement. And there has to be an effort to try to pull all these forces together to make sure that we're taking these questions up. The war, and that it has to be, peace has to be based on justice in our communities and our workplaces. These are some of the tools and some of the organizational structures that we had to create to make sure that we're engaging our community and everyday workers in this war on the working people in America right now and the war on Black America. These two wars are going on simultaneously, the war on everyday workers and the war on Black America. Yes. So we have to use culture. I want to thank Sister Amina Baraka, Amira Baraka, Paul Robeson, all these great cultural artists for what they've taught us about the role and power of culture and song and music and art in this very important effort that we're a part of here today. So you'll have an opportunity to hear some of the songs that the Fruit of Labor wrote at the convention. We're going to have some fun with you because you're going to participate, believe it or not. The Fruit of Labor Singing Ensemble will be trying to deliver some messages that somehow engages you and gets you to start thinking about, because everybody says, man, this is nothing other than political agitation in Gaza, these songs. I said, but it got you up and thinking, didn't it? And we carry our work out through all these different vehicles. That's how Black Workers for Justice, and again, I'm honored to be in the midst of some of the best fighters I've ever seen, man. The Ricks and the Nathanettes and the Norman Fairleys and the Darian Smiths and the many other folks that came with us and who aren't here. And again, I bring you their greetings too of solidarity from Black Workers for Justice and from our union. And we'll talk more about how we're trying to build this coalition that we need to build in this period to empower people. We're not just trying to fight for a few legal reforms, a few new Democratic Party people. Yes. We're trying to give people power to try to transform the world.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. So the next question, and I hope I formulated this in a way that makes sense to people, but where do you think issues of U.S. foreign policy, war, and peace fall as a priority for people in the communities you work in? And I ask that question because I know when I first started working within the peace movement, in quotes, I would always hear, well, where are these people? Where are those people? Where are the black people? Where are the people working on this issue or working on that issue? And not to go into what the things that I told them, but that's a question that always is floating out there. So I think some of that has to relate to, well, what are the people that you want to see here? What's going on in their minds in terms of the issues that you think are most important to them and to you? So what do you think about that?
I think that, well, the question asks about people's subjective consciousness. You're asking about what's on their minds.
Right.
And so that's part of the question. And the other question is how easy is it to make what's on their mind shift or grow? And I think that that's really the real challenging question. And so that's the part I want to look at as well. In terms of what's on the minds of a lot of the people that I see at the local level, it's with a lot of the young people, they don't vote really very much at all. Some of them to some extent might have voted for Obama, but even to vote for Ras Baraka, it was the smallest turnout in voting in Newark in a long time. The young people, and I don't fully take that as a sign of cynicism and ignorance. I, to some extent, take that also as an aspect of knowledge. I think there's some knowledge there. I think that it's very difficult to count on both hands how many things voting has accomplished for us as humans in this world. It's very difficult to enumerate what voting has done. Whereas you can see what struggle has done. You can see what banding together and organizations and people working together has done. What politicians have been able to do has always been limited. And so for me, what's really on the minds of young people, these young people are scared and they're angry. They feel like they've inherited a world that's just crappy, and they're doped up on social media, and they're not happy about that though. They're not stupid, even though they're doped up on it. They're not, and it takes a lot of respect for them to see the difference, to see that there's both going on at the same time with them. There's a lot of intelligence in the young people who innately don't trust unions or 9-to-5s anymore. Not because there's something wrong with the union inherently, but because when you look at the history of what has happened to workers' movements, they've been so disempowered. You win for 30 years. You win rights for 30 years. The next generation loses whatever that generation won. And every generation has to keep fighting for what the generation before won. So what do these young people want to do? They want to become entrepreneurs. They all want their own business. None of them want to work for the man. None of them even think joining a union makes a difference. Because in their world, that whole world is gone. The post office, you join the military, then you retire. Well, that world is gone. Right? You don't work for 30 years at a company and then retire, and then that world is gone. So their outlook is very nihilistic. Their outlook is very temporary. They want something right now, but the thing is that what's on their minds, they're extremely creative. They're extremely bold. They want to build cities in the sky. Ask them what they want to do. I want to build a city up in the sky. And they're serious, right? So that's a problem to some extent, that you want to build a city in the sky instead of cleaning up the litter right in front of your face. So we work on that a little bit, those issues. I'd say the key in terms of foreign policy issues that are easy for them to point to learn if you teach them, the same militarization and intelligence that they're using in the drones is the same technology they're using in these cameras to lock all of us up in the hood in the cities. Yes. So when you come to cities like Newark, and I'll tell you because I'm friends with the folks at City Hall, so I got access to the police precinct, which is the head Homeland Security precinct in northern New Jersey. So all the equipment for surveillance and where all the FBI are based out of when there's an emergency in North New Jersey is in Newark. So I know the guy who runs that, and he let me in. And when you look at the cameras in Newark, the cameras, the surveillance equipment that they have, and how it's concentrated in the black sections of the city.
Yes.
Even though the Latino and the Portuguese sections of the city are up to crime too, it's not concentrated in corporate Newark. It's not concentrated at the Prudential Center. It's concentrated on the street corners where black kids hang out and sell dope and do what they do. So when you show them that the technology that they're using to trap us and to figure out how to confine us better is the same technology they're using in Israel against the Palestinian people, is the same technology that they're using to fly over the border of Mexico and Texas,
Yes.
they respond to that. It's just that we're not that sophisticated. We choose to talk about drones and not talk about the cameras in the hood too.
Yes.
You know? So once we give them the opportunity to protest against both, they will seize it. So I think that the limits of their understanding in part is just a function more of the limits of our ability to help bridge that for them. So there's just as much opportunity as there is ignorance.
And then the amen choir right here. The intersectionality of all these things. And I think the ignorance of a particular sector of our society that thinks that folks that we know don't think about these things. You know, I had a living room full of folks who were homeless talking about Gaza on Sunday. So people know about these things. They matter. There's also the feeling of hopelessness to create change. You know, I remember walking around my neighborhood, that's one of the poorest neighborhoods in Asheville, trying to register people to vote against Bush in the second election. And over as I knocked on doors, people said, why should I vote? They don't care about me. They don't know me. They don't care about me. They're never going to do anything for me. Why should I vote? I didn't have an answer for them. But by God, it made me think about what we're doing and what we're talking about and how we're talking about it. And so I'm glad that you're saying what you're saying. We talk about, you know, I studied under Paula Lark, who's a cultural anthropologist, as I call her. And she often would take pop culture and teach resistance through pop culture. And she was studying MTV back in the 80s when I met her. And then teaching particularly Southern songs coming out of the slave tradition, and how folks were trying to overthrow slavery and how this is a new slavery. And we have to talk about that was then, this is now, they're all connected. This is that is this. All of these movements are connected now. And so we talk about studying war no more, from that old song, and how practiced we are at war. How practiced we are, so much so that it's invisible. I don't know if you've ever practiced something. You get to be so good at it. Anybody drive and you wake up and realize you don't know where you're at or how you got there, but you got there. We practiced at war making that much that we don't even know the things that are feeding that in our culture, and how we are so participatory with that without even allowing that. We are just by our own participation in the culture allowing that. Without consciously thinking of it. We have an Army recruiter in our mall. You know, if that tells you something, we are students of war, and we don't know how to study peace. And so we're learning. We talk about the album, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, and how we've all been miseducated. It's the way that I talk about that. And I can ask people, raise your hands if you know things are broken. All my people know things are broken. Y'all know things are broken. I can go to the mall and people don't know things are broken. I can go to the penthouse and people don't know things are broken. And so change starts with the people that know things are broke. Because we know how to fix it. We know what's wrong. And we begin to then talk about solutions. And so we've got to study peace as hard as this culture studies war. And we've got to begin to shape our minds around how all of these things intersect and begin to talk about it in ways, I think, that make sense to the people that we're talking to. So thank you for talking about intersectionality of all these things. And I've got to say, Dr. King talked about the giant triplets long ago. He was making those connections, as was Malcolm X, and talking about how every war is a war against the poor at every level. And so when we talk about peacemaking, we've got to do the same thing. That peacemaking is for the poor at every level. It's for those who struggle. It's for the working class, like you said. It's for us. And when we begin to talk about that, that begins to make sense, because our people are struggling with the war against drugs. Our folks are struggling with those wars and the ways that those wars are trying to take our people from us and incarcerate and re-enslave this whole country. And so we've got to be talking about things at that level, because people get that. You know, the average life expectancy of people I work with is the age of 50.
Wow.
The age of 50. And so people are dying, bodies are dropping. Bodies are dropping, and there is a war that's happening. We just don't see the bombs, and we just don't realize it. And so we have to start talking about these things and talking about them loudly. So thank you.
To address the question of where does it fit as a priority, the question of peace and war. As many of us know, most individuals don't understand or don't want to really examine the impact of the question of the war or justice until it impacts them, their family, their neighborhood. Whether it's the environment or their community being poisoned with toxics, or whether it's their family being hit with violence, or whether that's the Twin Towers or 9/11 hitting my home city of New York. Only then do we really begin to say, gee, man, what's going on in the world? We begin to question ourselves. We got to understand, why is this such a low priority with most folks in terms of why they're not engaged in the discussion? I mean, even as I interviewed and talked with many of you here about why there weren't more black veterans here and more brown veterans here. And, you know, and as I spoke with my members here and Black Workers for Justice, and don't forget, just because you didn't see me in all the workshops doesn't mean we weren't engaging you guys and having discussions, because we came here to learn how to do our work better around the question of justice, peace, and the war. Because you guys have probably the most experience. You're intense. You guys have been on this for forever. So we took a look at these questions of individualism. Who's promoting the individualism to keep us from moving forward? You know something? There's a big white elephant in this room. The Occupy movement spoke directly to it. The 1% and the 99%. We done forgot about their critique of capitalism. Their critique of capitalism. We don't want to talk about it. No one has mentioned it thus far, other than you, Michael, in terms of, we got to critique this system, capitalism. What is its role in the media? What kind of garbage they're putting on TV to get people to take their minds off the real issues? I mean, what kind of culture are they creating in terms of, do we respect each other? No matter what our orientation is, or what race or nationality, respecting and feeling compassion for those immigrants that are on the border right now. I mean, they don't have us talking about that. We should all be talking about that in our unions, in our workplaces, in our churches, in our communities, about what's going on in the world. And really, we got to talk about this capitalist media and the capitalist culture and how it promotes this individualism, and it takes us off track, and it makes the question of justice and the war such a low priority. We have to think about that. And our young people who want to be an entrepreneur, and I agree with Sister Margaret, because thanks to some of our youth, and some of them are here, Mary and Tish and a few others, and I know my son's one of the leaders in Hip Hop for Justice, they're beginning to create their own culture where they start talking about these issues through their music, through their poetry, through showing films and having discussions. And trying to engage them in the Moral Monday movement, trying to engage them in the anti-war movement. Matter of fact, they showed me this, I think it was called Israel-Palestinian Situation, Basic 101. And I know Murray was talking about doing a particular discussion and film showing of this basic piece, because they said most folks don't understand the question of the human rights for self-determination for the Palestinian people and how that whole situation evolved. They said there needs to be more education amongst our young youth. So this question of they're just wanting to be entrepreneurs, it's our fault that they don't understand the importance of collectivity, which the union represents. And it's union's fault that they get locked into the usual business unionism of just doing grievances and just fighting for whether or not they get a pay raise, and not dealing with the social justice movement unionism that my union's a part of. It's a broader vision. That's why we're here. We got several union members here because we have a broader vision in terms of what the role of the union is. The unions must develop a new vision, a new culture that begins to adopt all workers, the casual worker, the taxi cab worker, the fast food worker. And as you can see, some of them, after 28, 30 years of agitation of Black Workers for Justice, we've been around 33 years, and some of them are following our lead since we've experimented with what we call pre-majority unions. These are unions that don't even have collective bargaining rights. As you know, most southern states, public service workers have no collective bargaining rights. We've been experimenting with these since 1981-82. We've been experimenting with some of these other organizational forms, worker centers. We started our first worker center in 1982. Now you see worker centers popping up all over. We have to be creative as trade unionists, and we have to have a different vision. Social justice unionism, tied to social justice movements.
Yes.
Workers are impacted not only by the struggles in their workplaces, but it's impacted by the war. And that's why we had to take it up at our union convention. And I assure you, I didn't write the resolution. We have other members, after years and years of all this agitation, discussion, and bringing them out to these activities, that they're beginning to see this as a priority in our work in our union. And our youth are beginning to see it as a priority in their work in the hip-hop culture that they're part of, as they challenge the capitalist media, capitalist culture, and individualism. And the other thing we got to be promoting, when young people talk about, I want to get my own job, we got to talk about, can't we create a community co-op? You know, pulling people together to work together to try to deal with the unemployment. They had a major conference which we have participated in, my union and Black Workers for Justice, in Jackson, Mississippi. Peace and blessings be on Brother Chuckway Lumumba, for those that you know that know Brother Chuckway. Him and his leadership and the leadership of building people's assemblies to begin to try to find some alternatives. We have to be responsible for looking and searching and experimenting and exploring these different alternatives. Otherwise, the young people will only see becoming a part of the capitalist system. And when they say, I just want to be an entrepreneur, hey, that's the only thing they're talking about is capitalism. They ain't talking about co-op. They ain't talking about manufacturing plants where the community cooperatively owns and decide what's get made and how they, how the corporation or the plant impacts the health of the community or the safety and well-being and the environment of the community. Only we have to play that role. We have to play that role. All progressive thinking people like the folks in this room. So on the question of priority, we have to help reshape the priorities of the people that we work with, the working people we work with day to day, and particularly the youth. And we have to fight for another vision other than the vision they're getting with, Puff Daddy and all the hip hop artists, man, making their money, because they're not reinvesting it in the community. Like Amir Baraka, when he began creating the Spirit House and cultural institutions, or like the Fruit of Labor that has a cultural center in Raleigh, which we own the building. And as you already know, we hire those young folks and the people in our community to do the work in that center. See, that creates opportunity that shows that as a collective we can solve problems together. That must be the outlook that we try to share as we try to get people to shift their priorities from the individualism, or it's not affecting me, or my children didn't get bombed in Gaza, to this is our world.
Yes.
This is our community, and we can change it.
So I have 4 questions, but our time's running a little short, so I'm going to ask this third one and make a few comments myself, and then we want to get to some engagement with the audience here. It seems that communities and struggles tend to be divided, and we seldom are able to assemble a united front. Those rare moments when unity is found, it does not broaden or last. What are your comments on this assessment, and what role could the peace movement play in building unity?
I think that question can be answered either from a historical perspective or from a more sort of personal, anecdotal perspective, right? There are a lot of ways you can answer that, like where have we gone right, where have we gone wrong? Why is it when it seems like we're going right? Well, are we talking about the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, right? Are we talking about Spartacus, right, when he led the slave insurrection in the Roman Empire? There are a lot of examples.
Not going back that far.
We could, though. We could probably learn some things from Spartacus. But, I was not here for the board meeting, even though I'm on the board in the process of transitioning off the board for this most recent board meeting. And I do apologize for missing it. That was not my intention. I was at work and I couldn't get here for that many days. It's my understanding that right now we're trying to work through what the criteria currently are in terms of policy for someone to be able to run for the board and how long you've been engaged in being in VFP actively before you can run for the board. I remember this conversation coming up some time ago, and understandably, you want to ensure that everyone who seizes the mission of putting forward peace and working, with this organization, you want to ensure that they have some commitment to the development of this organization, and they're not self-interested and just worried about promoting themselves, or that they're not just saboteurs. What I also get the impression that's going on now, though, is that we're kind of split as a board as to whether or not, if you've been in VFP for 6 months and you want to get involved, if you can become on the board, what the criteria is. Because there's been a lot of struggle about the extent to which Black and Latino people are not represented appropriately on the board, if in fact the direction we're trying to take this organization into is going to be one where we're focused on putting forward peace at the local and global levels, drawing the connections that exist, and putting forward peace in the hoods and in the working class communities, as well as in Gaza and overseas. How does the board and the leadership of this organization help position us to do that better? And it's my understanding that right now, as a board, we're working through these things. And now it's in the membership's hands to determine whether and what the criteria is. I'm not sure if I'm correct about understanding what the situation is. But I need to be extremely clear about the fact that until VFP is ready to take the risk and the leap and the jump and to say, okay, we're going to we're going to wake up and understand that you all who are ready and showing interest in this and in us, you all can seize the reins with us. We can mentor you with the things we know, the areas where we've lived and we understand life in certain ways that you don't, the blind spots you have that we've seen. And then we're going to step back for the things that you understand that we'll never get, right? Until we turn over a lot of this leadership to a new generation, to a more diverse generation, to some more LGBTQ-oriented folks, unto more Black and Latinos, until we understand that there's inherent knowledge in those demographics, and there's experience, and there's understanding, and there's love, and there's understandings of peace, there's lenses, there's visions, there's understandings of the world that many of us just will never have. See, I'm from Newark, but my mother is a professor, and my dad is not, but the point is I came from a radical background, so there's a lot of things I was shielded from. So even though I feel it when the people in my neighborhoods get shot, because my students go through it, and because the men that I've dated in my life have been through it, and because my girlfriends, my best friends have been through it, I haven't been through it. So it still doesn't affect me the same way it affects my students. So you can't tell me that when people lecture to you about peace at home, peace abroad, you feel it the same way if you haven't lived it. You just don't. It's not personal that you don't feel it. It's not your fault that you don't feel it. But the reality is you don't. So since you don't, until you let those people in to help guide, we will always be limited in who we are and what we do. And I'm saying that. And I'm saying that not because as it's an indictment of, oh, well, you're this, so therefore you're that. It's that, no, I'm not on that. And it's just the reality of what we're talking about when we say racism and sexism, when we talk about systematic denial of human beings being allowed to realize their potential systematically, right? America was built on that systematic denial on so many levels.
Yes.
So we know that poor white people in Appalachia have been denied their humanity in many fundamental ways. And we know that many of the veterans here come from the traditions of poor working class white people. We understand that. So then the question is, well, what happens when you have a messed up system like that denies our humanity on so many levels and then throws so many divisions between us that we hate each other at the same time while we're all being denied our humanity? What do? Well, when we get the few people who are willing to come together to try to fight to overcome that, we don't need to build more blocks internally from allowing that to happen. That's what we don't need to do. So I'm just saying that as a concrete now example of it. And then historically, that's another answer to the question. Historically, every single time people have overcome those boundaries, whether it's the Scottsboro movement from back in the 30s, when you had people in Latvia, people in Argentina, people in Australia, people in Haiti, people in Cuba, sitting down to defend 9 black boys who were going to be lynched in Alabama. And then they would go into those communities and they would either kill them for doing that or they would lock them up for doing that, right? Every time we've ever stood together in history, because the people in power are more powerful than us, they have beat it out of us. So we're scared. That's why. And the history is not taught from one generation to the next. That's why we lack that type of unity. So when he's mad that we don't use the word capitalism, it's because it's been beaten out of us. Every time we did use the word capitalism, it was those people who were the radicals who messed up in a lot of ways too. So we feel guilty. So we censor ourselves in part because of the shame we feel. So I think it's a messy answer to your question. It's a huge question. Why is it that when we're winning, we start to lose? Right? But we also need to have a long-term commitment to the solution. Because the people who've been dividing humanity into class-based societies with exploitation does go back to Spartacus and before. So if we think we're going to annihilate racism and sexism in a generation, when racism has had at least 500 years to grow, sexism has had 10,000 years to grow, and we think in 1 or 2 generations or in one organization or one board, we're going to figure out how to make the world a better place, well, duh. Right? So I think that that's why we have to have a long-term vision of the past and even longer-term vision of the future. Thank you.
I was taught by one of my mentors, Ed Loring, that love requires proximity. You could say that about justice, about peace. You can't talk about peace unless you're proximate with people that have had the shit beat out of them. Can we say that? Yes. In public? When people have been beat down time and time and time again, you can't say, let's have peace in the world. Because they'll call you a hippie. A lot of people think I'm a hippie. I said, no, I'm not a hippie. I'm not a hippie. That's not what I'm about. I'm about concrete realities of connecting with people. And you've got to cross boundaries. When I looked at this room, I said the same thing. These folks have got to cross boundaries, cross boundaries, cross boundaries. Because we can't say y'all come. That's what we say in the South, y'all come. Because people ain't coming. They haven't felt welcome for how many hundreds of years? They're not going to come. They're not going to show up. You got to go and say, sit down, right? You've got to go and cross that boundary and say, I want to get to know you. I want to hear your struggles because your struggles are my struggles. And when you begin to do that, you begin to fall in love with each other, cross these walls. And then you begin to feel what other people are feeling because, as our brother said earlier, I don't know what to say to my friend who lost 9 people. But he knows that brother that lost 9 people is different. I don't know anybody yet that's lost 9 people in Gaza. But if I can, that concreteness changes me. And it changes the way I look at that struggle, and it changes the way we begin to organize. But years ago, I was talking to you earlier about this. Years ago, we realized if we don't show up for other people when they're under the gun, something's wrong with us. Something is wrong with us. If we sit here and say our issue is so important, and we get mad for people for not showing up for our issue, but we don't show up for somebody else. So we started showing up for somebody else, and guess what? Pretty soon, they started showing up for us. So I tell people we're not good at this. We don't know a whole lot, but we show up. We'll show up and we'll learn, and we'll fight, and we'll study, and we'll educate ourselves, and we'll come together. And that's when change starts happening, is because we cross those boundaries and we know that your struggle is my struggle and my struggle is your struggle. And if you don't have anything to eat when you go to bed, then by God, I really don't either. And when we make those aha moments, when we make those connections with each other, that's when peace has already come in that moment, in that place between those people. And that then can ripple out. And that's the only way I think that it's going to happen. So that's what brings unity, is that we have to cross over to each other.
Yeah, I think these are very dynamic factors and necessary to build the kind of unity that we need, to build the sort of broad, united front social movement that we need to address the question of justice and peace. Because we already know there will never be any peace unless there's justice. That means we got to be a part of all the social justice movements.
That's right.
How many of y'all were out there on Gen 06 supporting the Gen 06 folk? Raise your hand, really. Physically out there, mobilizing young folks. How about Trayvon Martin? Raise your hand.
Yes.
If we weren't out there being a part of that movement, those folks are going to say, so how are we going to have peace if they don't see there's a need for justice?
That's right.
On the immigration question, if we're not a part of these movements and organizations and efforts, we're not going to get to the point where people begin to see Dr. King's, critique book for you to read on the question of building coalitions. And King did give some lessons in his book, Trumpets of Conscience. Raise your hand if you pick that book up. Make sure you pick it up. Trumpets of Conscience, King's last 4 speeches. Lucky if the book's 137 pages.
Yes.
When I heard the speech from Riverside Church, I think I was 18 years old or so, King said that Marxism is an indictment against capitalism in America for not making democracy real. Now, you know I went straight up to Riverside Church to try to get a copy of that tape. I didn't believe King said that. As you know, some of those books that he wrote and speeches, they used the National Security Act. You couldn't sue and get it under the Freedom of Information Act because they were trying to keep it on the down low. That's not what they wanted to project about King. That's not the King they wanted us to know about.
Right. Come on.
Too often, the real lessons of what dynamics are necessary to build this united front, there's the lessons. They're in the writings and works of many of the organizations that came before.
Yes.
Think about it. Why would they have to come up with a counterintelligence program to kill the Black Freedom Movement and the Black Liberation Movement? Why? Because they were getting close to answers to what sort of things were needed to try to build the united front that we need. Let's think about this. The Moral Monday movement. How many of y'all are familiar with the Moral Monday? Good. Also, again, I want to thank Brother John Hewitt. I keep looking at that brother. When we're trying to build these movements, we got to figure out how do we really engage other segments that normally wouldn't be engaged in these sort of movements. The U.S. Social Forum, the Moral Monday movement, all these great forums that we're having where people are building unity through getting to know each other. That's the first step. Getting to know each other.
Yes.
Getting to trust each other. I'll be honest with you, Reverend William Barber, a good friend of mine, we've been working with him for the last 8 or 9 years in the historic house on John Street. He's no great messiah, but I tell you one thing, that brother is smart enough, him and his leaders and movement, to get to know people.
Yes.
He knows many of the folks who have been participating in this room. He knows who they are. Getting to know folks. Forget the top-down kind of coalitions. The ones where you get in touch with the leaders and presidents of the unions and of the other churches and groups, but you don't even deal with the rank-and-file folk in those churches and in those unions. If we're not building it from the bottom up, we're not building a long-term resolution, a united front or coalition that we can nurture and build on for years and years to come. We're just not. Because those leaders come and go. They do. And they get assassinated. And as we learned from some of the trials, since I know I had my trial, they dismissed many of the charges. I still got one left for the Moral Monday arrest. They said that inside the courtroom, the DA was talking about, they had done surveillance on many of the folks, there. And they were trying to do some red baiting there too, just to push us away from each other. They're always trying to find any little way to split us up and keep us away from each other. We have to be strong enough to understand that we have to build from the bottom up. We got to have another culture. Even here, where's the culture that reflects the African American experience, the Latino people's experience, the LGBT experience? We got to be able to do that if we're going to pull and build this organization and make it bigger and make it one of the pillars for building the broader social justice movement we need in order to win this, this fight for peace and to end these unjust wars. It's not going to happen unless we understand that we have to change our thinking. We have to change our thinking about the different nationalities and culture. Even last night at that concert, man, we should have mixed up a little, put a little flavor up in there. You know what I'm talking about?
Come on now.
You got to put something up in there, right?
Yes.
Otherwise we're not going to bring those other folks in because it doesn't relate to them. They don't relate to it.
That's right.
And y'all know, we're all basically older. I know I'm 62, and boy, we got to figure out, get younger people. Michael's pretty young, but we got to get them even younger than Michael to help us figure this. Just to give us some input on how to attract more young folks. And by the way, we've had a significant number of black and young folks here at this particular convention. Yesterday they did a great job. Around 2 o'clock they had a session here, and I was picking their brains, man, trying to learn from them. We just got to be that open and that dynamic as we try to build this broader social justice movement. And one last piece on the union question, since unions do deserve a beat down. They're late, they're slow. On the immigration question, late, slow, they are. I'll never forget when Black Workers for Justice was raising it in the 1980s, raising the immigration question. They told the Fruit of Labor they didn't want us to come back talking about that question because their members weren't ready for it in the AFL-CIO. They did, I don't mind saying it. Because we were raising it up through Black Workers for Justice in our work. Too many times, man, the labor movement is moving too slow. Their leadership is moving too slow. On the fast food worker movement, which is a great movement that we got going on right now.
Yes.
Raise up NC 15, let's give them. Can you imagine if we were leading that struggle when the big downturn in wages came? Man, we got to be out there a little more. We got to take more risk. And finally, y'all know that why we organize in the workplace. If you don't, it's a strategic place of organizing where you can shut down things. We've had 3 illegal strikes here in North Carolina. I don't mind telling you, they're illegal. The one we had in 2006 in Raleigh with the sanitation workers when they weren't paying them under the Fair Labor Standards Act. We had another one in Greenville, another one in Durham. People say, why haven't you guys been arrested? It's against the law. It says you get jail for that stuff. Because we were part of a broader social justice movement.
Yes.
I mean, they weren't going to mess with us and the entire community and all our allies and Reverend William Barber and the H-Gate Historic Thousands on Jones Street. Man, come on. We have to build those kind of broad efforts in our labor movement and not just get focused just on our workplaces. But we can't give up organizing the workplace. Remember what happened in South Africa fighting apartheid, South Africa. COSATU, a revolutionary trade union movement, which ANC was a part of, also endorsed and encouraged. They played a major role striking and shutting down apartheid. That's the reason why we need to get these young people who are really turned off from unions in the union movement. So they can figure out new ways and a new vision for moving forward with doing this union organizing. Can't do it the way we did it back there 10, 20, 30 years. The situation for labor has changed immensely. Therefore, need a new vision, need a new culture, need younger, new leaders. That's the reason I'm no longer ran for president this last election. I told them I'll just support the younger person in vice president roles to train them. Really, we got to play those kind of support roles. Move new leaders forward, try to support them, and let them learn from their experiences as they continue to experiment, to try to figure out how to build these broader alliances and united fronts as we try to put an end to all these unjust wars and continue to fight for justice. I just want to thank everybody for this opportunity just to share some perspectives of my organizations that I know I play a significant role in, and want to hear from some of y'all.
Well, I think it's been a very, very powerful panel, and I'm glad we're videotaping it because there's little quotes. I mean, probably heard 30 standalone quotes that we can use. And one thing I think is important is the idea of getting to know each other, but the other side of that is then struggling together.
Yeah.
Because even in our organization, Veterans for Peace, one of the reasons that we all feel so much brotherhood and sisterhood with each other is because we have struggled together. People have been arrested together. You've gone to Gaza together. You've been on boats that have been attacked together. I mean, that's a lot of stuff you've done together that makes you feel real strong with each other. And that's one of the ways, that's the way that you're going to build a broad front, is when we're standing together on wide issues that's affecting each other. And then, you'll go anywhere and do anything together, like many of us do. So that's really important. The other thing that, when you look at the building of the broad movements, and I talked the other day about us being brave, because we are brave, but we have to be braver because we have to look at ourselves and be honest about things we aren't doing, be happy about the things we are doing, because we got to celebrate ourselves, so we don't want to beat ourselves down, but you still have to reflect on what you're not doing and be brave enough to change. So I have to say, I do think, Asheville's great, and there's other, Austin, which I've never been to, but I know people who are from Austin and talk to them about that and other progressive communities. But every community I go to, I always look at who are the people I'm seeing, who are the people walking around. And all the communities, be they progressive or non-progressive, and then what I'm about to say, the people who aren't there are far away, is segregated. And I'm from North Carolina, so nobody can't tell me too much about North Carolina in general, because this is where I'm from. But there's no difference in many ways in Asheville than it is in other places when it comes to where are my brothers and sisters at. They're in their own community separated.
Yes.
And that's a problem that the left has, because we're supposed to be a liberal community here. And I understand it's like that in Austin and many places. So there's no way that if we're not honest with ourselves and struggling, because hey, if we're a liberal community, then we should be able to struggle and change that, right? Because who's standing in our way other than ourselves at that point? And if we can't do that and be honest about that, then there's no way that we're really going to be able to build that real strong progressive front. Because one of the oldest, if not the oldest, you could say Native American struggle, women's struggles is the oldest struggle as far as I'm concerned, like the oldest struggle. But in terms of America, 500 years old, if we're not dealing with that in the politic of where we say we're the best at, then there's no way we can push it out those places where it's more difficult. So I think that's one thing that's truly missing for all of us in dealing with that. And when I say that, let me just say this, and we'll get to the questions. It's not about white people, it's also about black people too, because I have to discern when I push back on something I might see you do. I got to also look at myself. Well, am I being overly sensitive? So there's a back and forth that we both have to be brave enough to do. And the men have to be brave enough to do when the women push back on you. The women also have to discern some things too. That's how we move forward together, when we're brave together. Yes. And then we can really make that difference because we're all being brave.